Throughout history, whispers of dark magic and supernatural power have struck fear into the hearts of many. From the infamous trials of Salem to the bone-chilling legends of Baba Yaga, witches have haunted folklore and reality alike. But who were the most terrifying of them all? Join us as we uncover the most chilling witches in history, real and mythical, whose tales still send shivers down our spines. Beware, some stories are darker than you think. Are you ready? Isabel Gowdy, Scotland, 1662. In the heart of 17th-century Scotland, a country gripped by religious fervor and fear of the supernatural, one woman's confession sent shockwaves through history. Isabel Gowdy, a Scottish woman from the village of Alden, provided one of the most vivid and detailed accounts of witchcraft ever recorded. Her testimony, given in 1662, described encounters with the devil, participation in witches' sabbaths, and shape-shifting into animals. Unlike many other accused witches, her confession was uniquely elaborate, offering a rich glimpse into the folklore, fears, and beliefs of the time. Whether her account was coerced under torture or the product of an imaginative mind, Isabel Gowdy's words continue to fascinate historians and folklorists alike. The witch hunts in Scotland. To understand Isabel Gowdy's confession, it is essential to consider the context of the Scottish witch hunts. Between the 16th and 18th centuries, thousands of people, mostly women, were accused of witchcraft, with many subjected to brutal interrogations and executions. Scotland's legal system was particularly harsh, influenced by both Protestant zeal and King James VI's fascination with witchcraft, as evidenced in his 1597 treatise Demonology. The country's judicial structure allowed local authorities to conduct trials with little oversight, leading to widespread accusations and convictions. It was in this atmosphere of paranoia and religious extremism that Isabel Gowdy's story unfolded. Who was Isabel Gowdy? Very little is known about Isabel Gowdy's life before her confession. She lived in Alden, a small village in the Scottish Highlands, and was likely married to a farmer. There is no clear record of why she was accused or arrested, but by 1662, she found herself in the hands of the authorities, providing a series of confessions that would become legendary. Unlike many accused witches, Isabel was not subjected to an official trial with a detailed record of proceedings. Instead, her confessions exist as written transcripts, suggesting that local officials documented her statements with great interest. Whether these confessions were extracted under torture remains uncertain, but the level of detail in her account suggests a mix of personal belief, local folklore, and external influence. Confessions of Witchcraft and the Devil's Pact. Isabel Gowdy's confession spanned multiple sessions, during which she provided an extraordinary amount of detail about her supposed dealings with the devil. She claimed to have renounced her Christian faith and sworn allegiance to the devil, who appeared to her as a man in black. She described a ritual where she and other witches baptized themselves in his name, receiving new identities in their unholy congregation. Gowdy gave elaborate descriptions of the witches' sabbaths, secret nocturnal gatherings where witches feasted, danced, and engaged in acts of sorcery. She recounted flying through the air on magical winds and described how witches use spells and charms to cause harm to their enemies. One of her most striking statements involved the devil himself, whom she described as a figure of power who provided his followers with gifts and instructions. Her confessions included spells and incantations, such as those used to summon supernatural forces or transform objects and animals. These spells, later recorded, are some of the most detailed examples of Scottish folk magic ever documented. Shape-shifting and supernatural abilities. One of the most remarkable aspects of Isabel Gowdy's confession was her claim that she and her fellow witches could shape-shift into animals. She stated that she could transform into a hare and recited an incantation. "I shall go into a hare, with sorrow and such an meikle care, and I shall go in the devil's name, while I come home again." This belief in shape-shifting was not uncommon in Scottish folklore, where witches were thought to take the form of hares, crows, or cats to avoid capture or to carry out misdeeds unseen. Gowdy claimed that, to return to human form, she had to recite another spell, reversing the transformation. Her testimony also described encounters with fairy folk and interactions with other supernatural beings, further blending Christian demonology with older Celtic and pagan traditions. The fate of Isabel Gowdy. Unlike many accused witches, there is no surviving record of Isabel Gowdy's execution. Given the severity of her confessions, it is likely that she was sentenced to death, as most convicted witches in Scotland were strangled and burned. However, some historians speculate that her confessions were so fantastical that the authorities may have dismissed her as mentally unstable, potentially sparing her life. Regardless of her ultimate fate, Isabel Gowdie's confessions remain one of the richest sources of historical information about witchcraft beliefs in early modern Scotland. Her detailed descriptions of rituals, spells, and supernatural experiences provide insight into the fears and folklore of the time. Interpretations and legacy. Modern historians and folklorists continue to debate the nature of Isabel Gowdie's confessions. Some believe that her stories were influenced by local folklore and religious teachings, while others argue that she may have suffered from psychological distress or coercion. The absence of direct evidence of torture leaves open the possibility that she truly believed in her experiences or was caught up in the hysteria of the time. Her confessions have inspired numerous works of literature, music, and scholarly analysis. She has been depicted in novels, plays, and operas, cementing her place as one of the most famous figures in witchcraft history. Today, Isabel Gowdie is remembered not just as an accused witch, but as a storyteller whose words preserve the fears, superstitions, and traditions of 17th-century Scotland. Whether a victim of persecution, an imaginative narrator, or a believer in her own supernatural experiences, her legacy endures as a powerful symbol of the Scottish witch trials and the dark history of witch hunts in Europe. Alice Kyteler, Ireland, 1324. Lady Alice Kyteler holds the distinction of being the first recorded person accused of witchcraft in Ireland. A wealthy and influential noblewoman in 14th-century Kilkenny, Alice's story is one of intrigue, power, and persecution. Accused of sacrificing animals and making pacts with demons, she ultimately fled before execution, while her maid, Petronilla de Meath, suffered the horrific fate of being burned at the stake. Her case remains one of the most famous witch trials in medieval history. Background of Alice Kyteler. Alice Kyteler was born in the late 13th century into a prosperous merchant family in Kilkenny, Ireland. She married multiple times and amassed significant wealth, largely due to her financial acumen and strategic alliances. Her 4 marriages to well-off men contributed to her affluence, but they also attracted suspicion and resentment from both her stepchildren and local authorities. Her husbands were William Outlaw, Adam Le Blund, Richard de Valle, John Le Poer. Each of these men was wealthy, and following their deaths, Alice inherited substantial wealth and property. Her accumulation of power made her a target, particularly among her stepchildren, who would later play a crucial role in the accusations against her. Accusations of witchcraft. By 1324, tensions surrounding Alice reached a climax. The children of her deceased husbands, resentful over her control of their father's estates, accused her of practicing witchcraft. The charges against Alice and her followers were severe and reflected contemporary fears about sorcery and demonic influence. Among the accusations were sacrificing animals to demons. Alice was accused of offering sacrifices to a demon named Robin Artisan, described as a dark figure who would visit her at night. Performing sorcery to influence men. It was alleged that she used magical potions to manipulate and poison her husbands. Engaging in heretical rituals. Accusations stated that Alice and her followers gathered at night to perform forbidden rites. Denying the faith and blaspheming. She was accused of renouncing Christianity and seeking the protection of demonic entities. These charges were not merely social slanders, they carried dire legal consequences. At the time, heresy and witchcraft were punishable by death, and Alice's fate rested in the hands of the Church. Bishop Richard de Ladride's role. The leading force behind Alice's prosecution was Richard de Ladride, the Bishop of Ossory. A strict and zealous churchman, Ladride saw Alice as a threat to religious orthodoxy. He launched a fervent campaign against her, seeking to purge Kilkenny of heretical influences. However, Alice had powerful allies. Many local nobles and authorities, who benefited from her wealth and influence, were reluctant to support the bishop's crusade. This led to a legal and political battle between Ladride and Alice's supporters. Alice's escape and Petronilla's fate. Despite the accusations, Alice managed to evade execution. With the help of her connections, she fled Ireland before her trial could reach its conclusion. Some accounts suggest she escaped to England, while others leave her fate uncertain. Unfortunately, her maid and close confidant, Petronilla de Meath, was not so fortunate. As one of Alice's closest associates, Petronilla became a scapegoat for the authorities. Under torture, she confessed to aiding Alice in her sorcery and engaging in demonic practices. Her coerced confession led to her being burned at the stake in 1324, marking one of the earliest recorded witch executions in European history. Legacy and historical impact. Alice Keitler's trial was one of the first documented cases of witchcraft accusations in Ireland, and it set a precedent for future witch hunts. It showcased how wealth, gender, and power dynamics influenced such cases. Alice, as a wealthy and independent woman, was seen as a threat, and the accusations against her were deeply intertwined with financial and political motives. Her story remains a significant chapter in Irish history, illustrating the dangerous consequences of superstition and religious zeal. Today, she is remembered as a symbol of resistance against unjust persecution, and her tale continues to intrigue historians and scholars. Lady Alice Keitler's case was a landmark moment in medieval Irish history. Though she managed to escape with her life, the trial resulted in the tragic execution of her maid, Petronilla de Meath. The events surrounding Alice's accusations highlight the intersection of power, superstition, and gender dynamics in medieval society. Her story serves as a reminder of the dark history of witch trials and the often fatal consequences of such accusations. Mother Shipton, England, 16th century. In the quiet, mist-laden hills of Hollow Moor, where the ancient oaks whispered secrets to the wind, there lived a woman known as Morwenna the Seer. Though never persecuted as a witch, Morwenna's reputation as a prophetess cast a long shadow over the village. Her predictions, eerily accurate, unsettled the townsfolk, filling them with an equal measure of awe and fear. Born under an ominous blood moon, Morwenna was always different. Her mother, a midwife and herbalist, raised her on the fringes of society, teaching her the language of the forest, the rhythm of the tides, and the meanings woven within the stars. By the age of 7, Morwenna had already begun to murmur cryptic phrases in her sleep, words that, when recalled upon waking, often foretold events yet to unfold. The first of her many prophecies came to pass when she was only 12. A traveler arrived in Hollow Moor, seeking shelter from a storm. Morwenna, watching from her mother's doorstep, spoke to him in a voice not entirely her own, "Beware the silver fox that runs at dawn, for it will lead you to ruin." The men dismissed the warning, laughing it off as the musings of a peculiar child. But the next morning, he set out on his journey, and as the sun rose, a silver-coated fox darted across his path. He followed it, drawn inexplicably by curiosity. Hours later, his body was found at the bottom of a ravine, his horse having stumbled in pursuit of the elusive creature. Whispers spread. Morwenna was not just a healer's daughter, she was something other. Some believed she was blessed with second sight, a gift bestowed upon few. Others feared her as an omen of misfortune. Nevertheless, the villagers sought her wisdom, albeit with apprehension. She told of droughts before they came, of bountiful harvests before the seeds were sown, of deaths before the bells tolled. One of her most chilling predictions came on the eve of the winter solstice. The town's mayor, a proud and skeptical man named Ewan Harcourt, approached Morwenna in jest. "Tell me, seer of Hollow Moor," he said, "what fate do the stars grant me?" Morwenna studied him for a moment, her gaze like the mist curling through the trees. Then, in a hushed voice, she whispered, "By the turning of the third season, your name will be spoken only in mourning." Ewan scoffed, shaking his head, yet unease flickered in his eyes. Spring came and passed, then summer, then autumn. And as the first snowfall dusted the rooftops, Ewan was found lifeless in his study, a look of terror frozen upon his face. No wound, no ailment, only the echo of Morwenna's words, now repeated in fearful reverence. Her reputation cemented, Morwenna became both an oracle and an outcast. She never married, nor did she attempt to integrate into the daily lives of the villagers. Instead, she remained in her moss-covered cottage at the forest's edge, a place where the boundary between the seen and the unseen felt thin. Despite her eerie foresight, she was never persecuted as a witch. Perhaps it was because she never caused harm, nor invoked spirits, nor wielded charms. Or perhaps it was because, deep down, the people of Hollowmoor knew her words were not malice but truth. They feared her, but they also depended on her. When sickness swept through the village, they turned to her for remedies. When livestock disappeared, they sought her counsel. Even as they shuddered at the sound of her voice, they never silenced her. As the years passed, Morwenna's hair grew silver, her eyes more distant, as though she constantly peered into realms beyond the grasp of ordinary minds. She predicted the fire that would consume the granary, the flood that would threaten the town square, the passing of children before they had lived a full year. Each prophecy etched deeper lines upon her face, a burden she bore with quiet resignation. One autumn evening, as the leaves burned crimson and gold, Morwenna walked into the village for the last time. She stood at the well, her fingers trailing along the worn stone, and whispered a final prophecy: "When the moon weeps blood once more, my voice shall fade, and the winds shall carry me home." The villagers murmured, exchanging glances, but none dared question her. As the weeks passed, life continued, but an unspoken tension lingered in the air. Then, on a cold November night, the sky darkened with an eclipse, the moon bathed in a deep, sorrowful red. At dawn, they found Morwenna's cottage empty, the door swinging open in the wind. She was gone, leaving behind only the scent of heather and the echoes of her foretellings. Some say she walked into the woods, never to return. Others whisper that the earth itself claimed her, the forest embracing her as one of its own. But none could deny that the seer of Hollowmoor, the hag they feared yet revered, had known her fate all along. And so, her legend remained, lingering in the mist like a half-forgotten dream, whispered from generation to generation, a reminder that some truths are too eerie to ignore. La Voisin, France, 17th century. Catherine Monvoisin, known as La Voisin, was one of the most infamous figures of 17th-century France, entangled in a web of fortune-telling, poisonings, and dark rituals. Her story is inseparably linked to the notorious Affair of the Poisons, a scandal that rocked the court of King Louis XIV. As a fortune-teller, healer, and alleged sorceress, La Voisin catered to the desperate desires of the aristocracy, offering services ranging from love potions to lethal poisons. Ultimately, her activities led to her arrest and execution in 1680, marking her as one of history's most notorious practitioners of the occult. Early life and rise to notoriety. Born around 1640, Catherine Monvoisin's early life remains largely obscure. However, she was married to Antoine Monvoisin, a jeweler whose failing business forced her to find means to support the family. With an affinity for the mystical and an acute sense of business, she turned to fortune-telling, a practice in high demand among the nobility. It was an era when belief in astrology, divination, and supernatural influences permeated all levels of society, making her services both lucrative and sought after. La Voisin claimed to have prophetic abilities, performing palm readings and interpreting omens for her wealthy clientele. Over time, she expanded her repertoire to include more illicit activities, such as selling aphrodisiacs, performing black masses, and providing poisons to those seeking to rid themselves of unwanted spouses or rivals. Her growing reputation as a powerful occultist made her a central figure in a clandestine network of poisoners and conspirators. The Affair of the Poisons. The Affair of the Poisons was a major scandal between 1677 and 1682 that implicated many high-ranking members of French society in crimes involving poison, witchcraft, and even infanticide. La Voisin was one of the primary figures in this affair, serving as a supplier of lethal substances and conducting secret rituals for her clients. One of her most notable clients was Madame de Montespan, the influential mistress of King Louis XIV. Desiring to secure the king's love and eliminate rivals, Montespan allegedly sought La Voisin's help in crafting love spells and participating in black masses. These rituals, often conducted with great secrecy, involved sacrilegious elements, including prayers recited backward, the sacrifice of infants, and offerings to dark forces. La Voisin was also part of an underground network of poisoners who supplied aristocrats with deadly substances designed to dispatch inconvenient spouses or adversaries. Her collaboration with other poisoners, such as Marie Bosse and Françoise Philistre, ensured a steady demand for her dangerous services. The substances she provided were carefully concocted from arsenic, belladonna, and other toxic ingredients, earning her a formidable reputation. Investigation and arrest. As the number of unexplained deaths among the nobility grew, authorities began investigating rumors of poisonings and black magic. In 1677, the police arrested Marie Bosse, a fellow poisoner, whose confessions led to a cascade of arrests. By 1679, suspicions pointed directly to La Voisin, and she was apprehended along with several associates. During her imprisonment, La Voisin was subjected to intense interrogations. Though she initially denied involvement in criminal activities, evidence against her mounted as more accomplices and clients came forward. Testimonies revealed the extent of her operations, including her ties to the aristocracy and her role in various murder plots. However, she never directly implicated Madame de Montespan, possibly fearing repercussions even in captivity. Trial and execution. La Voisin's trial was one of the most sensational of the era. Witnesses described in chilling detail the rituals, poisonings, and secret gatherings she orchestrated. Despite the shocking nature of these revelations, the court sought swift justice. In February 1680, Catherine Monvoisin was found guilty of witchcraft, murder, and conspiracy. Her punishment was severe. She was sentenced to death by burning, a fate reserved for the most grievous crimes of the time. On February 22, 1680, La Voisin was executed in Paris, meeting her end at the stake. Her death marked the beginning of a broader crackdown on the occult and poison networks within France. Dozens of others connected to the affair of the poisons were also arrested, tortured, and executed or exiled. Legacy and impact. The downfall of La Voisin did not bring an immediate end to the affair of the poisons. Investigations continued, leading to more arrests and heightened paranoia within the royal court. King Louis XIV, horrified by the extent of corruption among his courtiers, ordered stricter controls on fortune-tellers and alchemists, effectively pushing such practices underground. Despite her grim fate, Catherine Monvoisin's story remains one of the most fascinating tales of crime and mysticism in European history. Her ability to navigate the dangerous world of aristocratic intrigue, combined with her knowledge of poisons and manipulation of the supernatural, cemented her place as a figure of dark legend. Her role in the affair of the poisons is a chilling reminder of how desperation, ambition, and superstition could drive people to the most extreme acts in the pursuit of power. La Voisin's legacy lingers in popular culture, inspiring countless books, films, and stories about her sinister trade. Her story is a testament to the dangerous intersections of magic, crime, and the political machinations of the 17th-century French court. From legendary sorceresses to real-life accused witches, their stories continue to haunt us. Were they truly wielders of dark magic, or just victims of fear and superstition? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into the macabre, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more spine-chilling tales. Until next time, beware of the shadows. You never know who or what might be watching.